The violinists come and he plays for like 10, 15 minutes next to the jacuzzi, then next to the pool.
98% everything is made on board from our pastry and baker. So we have a baker who's working mostly in the night to prepare all the fresh goods for the morning breakfast.
Welcome back to Winds of Change. I am so excited for our next guest. Windstar, the podcast, has been all about unveiling the behind the scenes. And we've had a lot of guests from our corporate shoreside office that works alongside our crew on board. While they're busy delivering a guest experience, there's a lot of work that happens on the shoreside. So today I'm so excited to bring and having us join here, Lieven. Hi, Lieven.
Hi, Jeanette. I'm so happy that I'm finally be on the podcast.
Yes.
And I can have this chat with you.
Now, usually we have asked you, I want to be very clear because you were one of our top on the list, but you've been traveling a lot. I know you spend a lot of time on board our ship. So I do thank you for carving out that little time and finally coming and joining us.
No, I'm here for a few weeks in Miami, so I'm really pleased that I'm here now. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So for those of them listening in and wanting to know a little bit about you, can you tell us a little bit about you and your career and how you arrived at Windstar?
Absolutely. So originally I'm from Belgium, right? I was born and raised there, and all my family is still in Belgium. But from a young age, I wanted to travel and see the world. But I didn't have the money for it, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you achieve that? Like, if you're still young but you want to explore, and then I saw the opportunity on working on a cruise ship, so I'm like, that sounds like fun. I should do that. So my first cruise ship I was on, I was only 19 years old.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So this was a river cruise ship. It was in France, and at that time I was the youngest crew member on board. So, but yeah, and that's where it started when I was 19 on a river cruise ship. Then I went to another cruise line. It was a German cruise line. I've also worked on celebrity cruises.
Oh, wow.
And eventually I did end up working with Seabourn.
Okay.
So, and they have also the small ships, mm-hmm. right? A little bit more similar to Windstar. And I really liked actually working for Seabourn. I'm like, this is actually nice.
Yes.
Yes, it's not like the big ship with all the amenities necessarily for always a crew member, but I kind of like the family feel and of the smaller ship. So I actually worked for Seabourn for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And at one point I did leave. I wanted to travel more. I went to Australia for a couple of years. Went back to Belgium, worked in. My mother had a chocolate factory. Anyway, that's another story.
Oh my
but I worked there for a couple of years.
I didn't know that. I love this podcast. I get to learn so much about.
But that's for another podcast.
I love it.
But then I went back to Seabourn and I stayed there for quite a while. And then I got promoted to work eventually for the corporate office. Mm-hmm. So at the end, when I was working on board, I was crew purser and chief purser.
Okay.
So like purser's department has been the biggest part. I mean, I've done many different positions, but purser's department and like reception has been the biggest part of my sea career, actually.
Nice.
And then just 4 years and a half ago, it's around 4 years and a half now, getting closer to 5, I moved over to Windstar. Amazing. For another opportunity.
And this was around the time where we were cutting the ships in half, right? The former Seabourn ships, we were cutting them in half and expanding them.
Yeah, and also, I mean, at the same time, it was also the pandemic.
Yes.
Right, so I actually joined the company during the pandemic, which was kind of a weird mm-hmm. way because none of the ships were like sailing at the time.
Right, wow, that is a weird time.
Yeah, and then, but then after half a year, the first ship came out, which was, I believe the Star Breeze was the first mm-hmm. ship. So then it was actually the relaunch after the pandemic, but at the same time, the relaunch after the Stretch project.
Okay.
Right? So it was two big things that happened.
Two big things, yes.
Right. So now you had like new venues. We had Quadro 44 added, 50% new guest suites were added. I remember I went there on the ship for like a month to just help the team on board to prep for
So
for
what was the
big
role and
relaunch.
capacity you were hired for back almost 5 years ago? What is your role, and is that still your role and capacity today?
Yeah, so my role today is Director of Guest Experience.
Yes.
Yeah, it has developed like over the years a little bit and changed a little bit, but in the main pillars or the main departments I support on board are still the same.
Okay.
Which is basically
It's entertainment.
So hotel operations
Okay.
on the ship, but not food and beverage. Food
Got
and
it.
beverage is managed by Peter
Tobler,
He was on your
yes.
podcast before. And then all the other departments that relate to hotel operations, they fall under me, such as entertainment,
Wow.
Housekeeping. It's a very big
Yes,
department,
it is.
quite often behind the scenes and forgotten, but they're
No, it is
one
not
of the most
behind the
most
scenes and
important
forgotten.
departments.
I
Okay.
have gotten very, and I'm sure those listening in that have sailed with us, they love our housekeeping crew. We have some of the best housekeeping crew, so it's not a forgotten department.
No, and I see always a lot of comments from our guests regarding the room attendant, and there's
Yes.
always a lot of compliments about the room attendant. So I do know that our
Yes,
guests
they're
don't forget it.
special part of the experience. They're behind the scenes, right? But they're so, people notice them,
Yeah.
but they're behind the scenes.
Exactly. Yeah. And then there's reception and purser's
Reception and purser,
department, the spa. So
Yeah, so a lot. And I know you
and also guest relations. Sorry.
Guest
I
relations, yeah.
don't want to forget that department, which is not an onboard department, but it's more for post-cruise inquiries.
Right.
So which is led by Isabel, and you know they're there to support the guests if there's any questions.
And kudos to
inputs.
Isabel. If you're watching this, she is phenomenal, and she takes care of our guests like I have never seen an individual do. She is phenomenal.
I know she has a lot of passion
She
to
does.
the brands, and she really cares.
She really cares, and I think it really comes through. Our guests know her. And so for those of you listening and watching, you, I'm sure if we mentioned that name, Isabel, and you've sailed with us and you've had any kind of an issue, you know who she is.
Yeah.
Hopefully not a lot of you. But, you know, let's talk about that. Sometimes, you know, we talk about all the things that are great. And I know one of the things that you're very passionate about in the office is our guest surveys. So you are responsible for, you know, a lot of the pieces of hotel operations, like you said, and you're working in the office, you're traveling around. And a big piece of that is guest surveys. So how we deliver the experience on board and hearing from our guests. So can you talk a little bit about that and how Windstar manages our guest surveys that are delivered by our guests and how they're distributed across the organization and back to the ships?
Yeah, definitely. And it's the guest survey is such an important tool to know what the guests think positive about us,
Right.
and of course as well where we could improve, right? Because there can always be an issue
Right.
or somewhere where we can improve. And the guests, obviously everybody at the end of the cruise, they will receive an email with a guest survey link, right? So they can complete, and we encourage all the guests to complete it, the survey. I will say the link expires after 6 days,
Yes.
right? And some people ask like why we do that, but the longer we keep the link open, the less impactful the response is, right? Because we want to know right away, the ship wants to know right away, like what the guests said about that cruise.
Right.
Not like 1 or 2 months later, because then, you know, there's so many cruises.
The details, you don't remember the details.
Exactly, and then like people come and go on the ship, right? So for us to make it more meaningful, the response, you know, that's why we have this expiring on it. But anyway, what is really important that I wanted to definitely mention is that every survey that is completed, our onboard team, they read those comments. And I just wanted to point that out because many times when you fill out these surveys from like, you know, maybe a trip that you made or from any company, everybody sends you surveys, right?
Right.
And who reads those surveys, you would wonder, especially, you know, if you do scores, it's one thing, but if you write in a comment, like who reads it? But with us, every comment gets read because our onboard team, they will receive at the end a report with all the comments from the survey, and they will read through every comment, right? Which is because then they can action it right away, like, oh, this
Exactly.
is what we liked. And you know, or if you have like name, like you put in the name from like some crew members that really
Go
went
above and beyond, yeah.
or just did like an amazing job. But also like areas of like, oh well, this went wrong or this was an issue for me, so they can kind of see how to rectify that in the future. So it is really important.
Absolutely.
But also from the corporate side, right, where we still read a lot of the comments. It's not always necessarily everybody in corporate can read every comment, obviously. But there we go a little bit more strategic on like, you know, what is like the general trends and where should we focus on, basically.
And you know what, I love every week we actually get a report of all the ships, and we do get, if we wanted to actually go in and see in detail. And so what happens is, if a ship, they usually are, you know, performing really top notch, right? Amazing. And then one sailing, we see that, oh my God, it didn't go well. What happened? Yeah. Usually it's related to weather.
Yeah.
And we cannot control weather, but at least you want to see, well, okay, we cannot control Mother Nature, but how did, you know, we perform? Okay, well, it wasn't anything we did wrong. It was more, they didn't have a great time, maybe because of the weather didn't permit or what have you. But even us at Shoreside, we look at those surveys, and I love the meeting that Isabel hosts every quarter, you know, voice of the guests, and where she actually gives snippets of the voices of our guests and keeps us in tune with what's happening on board and the feedback on board.
Yeah, because that's why we exist, right?
Yes,
deliver an amazing cruise product, but we need to listen to the voice of the guests of what that is and where we're doing it right or where we can improve.
There's so many action items, and that's why I wanted to bring up this topic of guest surveys, because sometimes guests go and enjoy themselves and they have a wonderful time and they don't realize, please give us the good and the bad, because when we start seeing a trend, right, which is a piece of information that comes up, you know, several times, we know that then it becomes a trend. And how do we action this so that either we do more of it because it's a good trend, or if it's something that's okay, it's not going very well, maybe too much plant-based food, maybe too much SOS, you know, so there's not enough. You know, is there a hybrid between, you know, no salt, no sugar, and, you know, a very hearty meal? And so we're constantly learning about our guests and what your expectations are so that we can react and deliver this exceptional experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And every corporate manager or director, you know, they focus on their areas of like, you know, what the guest is saying and where we can improve it.
Absolutely. So let's change the subject now. I would love to change the subject to entertainment, because you said something really cool, which is, well, I loved being on the big ships like Celebrity, because as a crew member, just like guests, they have lots of entertainment. They have ice skating rinks. They have, I mean, these are monstrous ships that have lots of things to do. And so when it comes to small ship cruising, the destination is the entertainment, right? There's different entertainment that we do deliver because we want to bring the destinations on board. And we have an entertainment and engagement director, right, that's also ensuring that our guests are having a fabulous time. So what can guests who've never been on a small ship experience that doesn't have we don't have a casino, we don't have a big Broadway show to promote, like what can guests expect when it comes to entertainment on board our ships?
So we are focusing more on like engagement, right? So like you said, we don't have the Cirque du Soleil show or all these other big things that they can obviously do on a big ship, and we cannot facilitate that on a smaller ship, right? And like you said, the guests do come for the ports and the itinerary a lot. So for that reason, we always, like at least once a cruise, we bring a local entertainment act on board. It could be like musicians or a dancing group.
Flamenco. I've seen the flamenco dancers in Spain.
Obviously in Spain, okay. So
or the Tahitian dancers, right, in Tahiti.
Yes, well, and in Tahiti we stepped it up a level because we actually have, because Star Breeze is there year round, right? So we actually have 2 Polynesian ambassadors on board, and they bring like the local culture during the cruise on like either they play music or they're doing some workshops or a class, learning the local language and so on.
And we have the mamas and papas, right?
The mamas and papas coming on board. We also obviously have our discovery event, Feast and Fire, which is like an evening event where you like have this amazing...
In Bora Bora.
In Bora Bora, on a small little Motu island in Bora Bora. It's an amazing event, that one, And then at the end there's the fire dance, and it's just amazing. But on every cruise we do also outside Tahiti. We do have a local entertainment group that comes on board. And besides that, we focus more on engagement, on either it's a game night show. We always have our cruise show, which is a staple for Windstar Cruises, right? Which is several crew members that have a talent.
Yes.
They do an act in the show, and it's always fun. And it just emphasizes our casual feeling and atmosphere that we want to have on board.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, talk about engagement. I mean, you feel this connection when the crew members come on board and they do the entertainment. And there's a lot of surprise and delights during that event and that show, just like there's a lot of surprise and delights around. And I think one of the surprise and delights that I found recently on social media, and thank you to our guests who've been posting about this, they seem to be loving it, is a violinist that we have on board. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience? Or is it still on? Was it just a moment in time?
No, it's still on. We have it on the windsurf. So we are trying a couple of different concepts as it relates to our musicians on board, to create a little bit more different variety.
Yes.
So we're working more with the musicians on doing more different concepts that they play on their own. But one addition has been that we actually hired a violinist on the windsurf, and that either he plays solo, but he will also collaborate with other musicians.
Yes.
During the cruise. And then as well, one evening he'll just go through all the restaurants playing the violin a little bit. And then one of my favorite moments was actually when I was on the windsurf just a few months ago, when we were at the pool on the aft of the ship. We had a little sunset, late afternoon DJ session, and then at one point the violinists come and he plays for 10, 15 minutes. He played the violin next to the jacuzzi, then next to the pool. Yeah,
I love that. Well, and that's exactly the one that I saw on social media. I was like, what is this? And I'm like, I remember writing to Stain or to someone, I think maybe you, and I was like, this is phenomenal. And he's like, and I think he responded with Stain, and he responded, yeah, one of our many surprise and delights that our guests can expect anywhere they stay with us. So there's a lot of things also that we don't promote that they will find when they come on board.
Yeah, definitely. And we're always trying to improve our product and look for new opportunities.
Yes, yes. One of the things that you talked about, I want to go back. So we've talked about guest feedback and survey and guest relations, and we talked about entertainment, and we touched upon housekeeping a bit. But I want to go back to that, because one of the things that also comes very highly rated from our guest survey, and I've learned this from reading them, is our laundry service and just how phenomenal it is. And people talk about this because sometimes when you're spending longer than 10 or 11 days on board our ships, we actually give you complimentary laundry, which I didn't know. And so our star collectors, which are the combination of cruises, allow you to come on board, not have to overpack, because you're going to have this amazing laundry service. So can you talk about housekeeping overall and what it takes to run a housekeeping department and run it successfully? Because I know it's a very highly rated area in those guest surveys.
Yeah, definitely. And so our housekeeping department, which is from the corporate side, I have a corporate housekeeper.
Yes.
And his name is Ravi da Costa. And he used to be working for us many years as a chief housekeeper, and now only recently we had the opportunity to promote somebody permanent in a corporate housekeeping position. He oversees that department. It's always, there's a lot of course, every guest actually can see their room attendant, right? And they know obviously what their room attendant does. But then there's a lot of hidden pieces, right? Of who is cleaning the public areas, right? And we have a night team as well that is doing rounds on the ship and doing all the public areas. And of course, you have the laundry, which is hidden on deck 0 of the ship.
Yes.
But there's a whole team there, and it's not only personal laundry that you're giving to them. Rich, and by the way, yes, you're correct, right? On longer cruises, it is complimentary, right?
Yes.
So then you can limit your packing a little bit. But it's also like your linen, your towels, the napkins,
Yes.
and also the crew, the uniforms need to be
Right.
laundered, right? So it's a big
Massive.
operation. Typically it's 24/7 that
Wow.
it runs. It's very, very busy there, but it's an important team that not everybody
Yes.
always sees.
No, absolutely. And one of the things that inspires me most about these podcasts, and I hope that those listening in who've probably watched several, is the amount of shoreside corporate employees that we have that have come from on board the ship. Just listening to your journey, Lee, is also very inspiring, I think, for the future generation. And so if you're watching this and you're looking to get a job on board one of our ships, or if you're looking to, get a job in one of our corporate offices, this is an amazing career. And you are a testament, like Chris and Stain and so many of our executives, that you can have a career in cruising and start from on board the ships, from the laundry room, from the Chris talks about his story about the dish. He was a dishwashing. He got promoted to the dishwashing machine. And so you all are a great inspiration to everyone listening in that either wants to travel with us, because you all have been on board these ships and you do an exceptional job making sure that experience is amazing. Or if they want to work for us, I think you're definitely inspiring the future generation. So congratulations.
And fun fact, because I know you mentioned in the podcast with Stain, our
Yes.
chief operating officer, that you thought it was like so fun that he was working with Chris at one point on the ship.
Yes.
But I actually worked with Stain at one
You
point.
did on the Pride.
I think it was the Pride. It was for a very, very short time. It was only
Okay.
like a couple of cruises, I think. I think he had to cover for a crew purser.
Yes.
For a very short time, and I was receptionist at the time. I mean, obviously this was a different company. It wasn't Windstar. But yeah, so, it's
But you
a
know
small
what that
world.
teaches? It's a
and-
small world. And I always tell people, don't burn your bridges. Don't burn your bridges, because it's a small world. And this is a beautiful industry because everyone knows each other and everybody helps each other out. And
Yeah.
so these careers that we've had, we're career lifers in the cruise industry, obviously. That's what we have in common. And so, yeah, it's really wonderful that everybody kind of reconnects somehow, some way through the industry.
Exactly. And I'm like, if you're in your 20s and you're young and you want to see the world, then go and work on a cruise ship.
Exactly. Yes. I tell that to my kids all the time, and learn and see the world. It's a great way to see the world.
And if it's not for you, you just do it a few years. You've seen a lot of
Exactly.
things in the world, and then you can still go back to shoreside. There's no,
Exactly.
it's
Yeah,
not
it's
a
a
permanent
great
obligation,
experience.
and then you figure out what you want. But it's
Yeah.
as opposed to jumping right away in a job land base
Yes.
and being like stuck, I would say. In
Yeah.
the same place,
Yeah.
explore the world a little bit.
Absolutely. I wish I would have done that. I actually didn't get to do that. I started corporate and got married and had kids and didn't get to do the ship life. But for those of you who have the opportunity, I highly recommend it as well. Now, last question that I've asked all of our guests on board the podcast. And so we have many listeners who haven't sailed with Windstar. And if they are considering a Windstar cruise, which is the first cruise you would recommend for them to take?
So I'm going to do two recommendations.
Okay, fine.
Just because depending if it's somebody that has never cruised before or they have already done a few
love
cruises,
that.
right?
Okay.
So if you've done a few cruises already but you're never on Windstar, I would say go to Tahiti. We have an amazing product there, with this Star Breeze all year round, and our with the local entertainment that we have
Yes.
there, and so on. The islands, it's kind of like Hawaii, but 10 times better because
Yes.
it's the untouched Hawaii, basically,
Yes.
right? Really authentic. But if you haven't cruised much or not at all,
Yes.
I would say the Mediterranean, right? Because I think the Mediterranean is like the best cruise destination in the world. And just because you have the history, you have the nice weather, you have the great food and wine. So from Greece to Italy to Spain,
Spain.
Côte d'Azur and in
Canary
France.
Islands.
Canary Islands, absolutely as
Yes.
well, and especially in the wintertime where we're gonna
Yes,
go soon. And like Croatia, it's so beautiful, Croatia, and we also go to Kotor in Montenegro, which
All
is one of
year
my
round
favorite.
now,
Which is one of my
yes.
favorite ports. It's so cute.
I
there,
haven't
yeah.
been to Kotor. I keep
Yeah, so
hearing
you
it's just
sail
like
into
phenomenal.
like fjord-like,
Yes.
and then there's a little castle on top.
I hear
and
it's beautiful. Yes, yes. And coming from Belgium, I'm sure you love the little castles and
Yeah, of
historic.
course, yeah.
Yes, of course. Lee, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here on our podcast. I'm sure this will not be your last. And so thank you all for listening in and thank you for joining us.
Thank
and we
you.
will see you all very
I'm
soon.
happy for having me.
Bye-bye. Welcome back, everyone, to our podcast, Winds of Change. And on this second segment of this episode, we thought since we spoke so much about food, that we should bring on board our corporate culinary director, who is right now on board Windstar and has called in and phoned in to talk a little bit about what is the experience that they deliver every day on board our ships. So welcome, Thorsten Senguda, to our podcast.
Hello. Thank you for the invitation.
So, Thorsten, you inspired us. Last week, you presented at an all employees meeting, and I was just so impressed by your presentation about what it takes to deliver a phenomenal culinary experience on board. And so, can you tell everyone here listening in a little bit about yourself and your exact role here at Windstar Cruises?
Yeah, I'm from Germany. I'm since December 2023 with Windstar. I'm actually in charge for all the culinary food offerings on board, development for future projects, and also I was in charge with my team, with Eric and Georg, to implement the basil and bamboo menu. So we took us 6 months to development and to make the recipes, to create the menu. So yeah, it's very interesting and never boring.
Never boring. So you are actually not on board one individual ship. Your role is to go from ship to ship, right? And visit and see what the culinary experience is, what the support that they need, and ensuring consistency across the fleet, correct?
This is correct. Actually, Eric, the corporate pastry and baker chef, and Georg, the corporate chefs, they are more on the ship as me. But of course, I also
Okay.
trying to be every 6 weeks. I also go from ship to ship to support them, and to meet the team, to meet my chefs, and give them daily operation and support them.
So I'm actually going to start with the pastry chef because when I hear pastry, I just think about all the amazing desserts and the amazing bread that I have eaten on board Windstar. Can you talk a little bit about what guests can expect when it comes to pastry and delights and baking on board our ships?
Of course. I mean, first of all, I think 98% everything is made on board from our pastry and baker. So we have a baker who's working mostly in the night to prepare all the fresh goods for the morning breakfast. So the bread, the Danish, and everything is prepared in the night to make sure every morning our guests getting a fresh baked goods like everything else. And the pastry chef is also working 24/7, actually also one night, to make sure we have all these calories, nice food offerings for our guests. And actually now we are trying to implement a new bread cycle. So also we have a new bread cycle, a trial run on the surf. And if our guests like the new bread options, we will implement fleet-wide.
I love that. So you actually do. I love that you do trials on certain ships. And if guests say, yes, this is great, then we go ahead and do that. And I think that's wonderful because it's not corporate office, right? That's telling you all what to do. You're actually going on board, trying things out based on your expertise, where you're learning, you're staying very up to date with the latest trends and what guests are looking for. And then you're testing it on our guests and they're the ones that are saying yay or nay. Right?
Normally either Eric or Georg, they goes on board to support the team for any implementation. Then we let run for 4 weeks on the ship. We get the feedback from our guests, and then after we decide, but normally they're all positive, then we go ahead and like a couple of things. When we start with the new yacht club offerings, we did the same. So 95% we always make a trial run.
Yes. And it's great that you actually brought up the yacht club. And So we were talking about plant-based and SOS meals, and we always talk about our specialty dining restaurants. But I think everywhere you go with Windstar, whether it's the canapes or you going to the yacht club to have a wonderful coffee, the desserts and pastries that are available, the options you have, depending on your dietary need, there's something for everyone everywhere you go in terms of what you're going to taste on board the ship. So can you tell a little bit about what happens at the yacht club? We haven't actually spoken about the yacht club itself and what the culinary offerings are there. If I just wanted to go get a coffee or a tea.
So actually we're having in the breakfast time, we have a different offerings until 11 o'clock, and then we have afternoon offerings. So it's different sandwiches, we have some sweets, desserts, and of course we have also some variety of plant-based items, what we serving on the daily base. Normally is a 3 days rotation, so after 3 days we start again. Yeah, it's actually a nice small food offering. If you like to have a grab to go somewhere, if you're on the hurry, you want to grab a coffee and then take a sandwich, or in the morning we have some nice smoothies. Everything is again, it's a small offerings, but I think we have for every guest something there to make sure they never go hungry from the boat.
No, absolutely. And I love the detox smoothie. In the morning, I always love to take a little shot right after my workout, because what happens is the day before, sometimes we tend to, if we eat a little bit too much, I tend to skip breakfast, go to the wonderful gym, and then just have a detox smoothie, a coffee, and then I'm ready to go for my rest of the day and reset my eating habits. But I think anything that you do try, the variety, and like you said, I learned that stat, like over 90% of the foods are actually prepared on board from scratch. They're not pre-made. And I think that in itself is tasted in the quality of the food. We don't talk enough about that. I'll be using that stat more often, Thorsten. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about JBF, James Beard Foundation, and how, you're inspired obviously by the culinary chefs, but what are we doing on our main restaurants? We just, we've interviewed our guests before where Anfora, we talk about Anfora, which is the main dining restaurant on the cruise that should really be a specialty restaurant. And Anfora has a rotating JBF menu. So can you talk about how do you plan and prepare the menus on board the ships?
So for the Amphora dinner menu, we're actually having minimum of 4 GBF dishes every day on the menu. So if you have now a 7 days cruise, we normally offering every time what there was in the past on the ship, we have the dishes and we will prepare them for the dinner menu. It's more for dinner. So actually this is why we had so many chefs in the past. They was on board and they give us the fantastic dishes, so we can also give them now for our guests every night to taste.
I love that. So those guests that have joined us through these JBF cruises, those preparation, those meals that become guest favorite become part of the menu that they can then try on any of the sailings. That's pretty phenomenal. So Thorsten, I know you're on board the Windstar and you have your very busy schedule. So I do appreciate you joining us last minute and coming on. But for the guests listening in, now that you have traveled to quite a few of our cruises, and if you were to recommend to your friends and family or any guest that's interested on Windstar Cruises, their very first cruise on Windstar, which itinerary would you recommend for them to go? If it was their very first cruise on Windstar and they wanted to try the best exquisite meals on board.
Oh, very difficult. I mean, so I like the Greek islands. I'm now here today. We are Mykonos. Is a nice itinerary, but also the Met, Barcelona, or there's so many. For me, it's so many different options. It's not. I don't have a favorite. Everyone going is everywhere nice. Tahiti is also very nice. So it's difficult to say.
Okay, so there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard it from our corporate chef. It doesn't matter what sailing you choose with Windstar, you're always going to dine phenomenally well. So it doesn't matter what you choose. He's going to assure you that you will eat well. Thorsten, thank you so much for joining us here today from on board the Windstar in Greece. Amazing. And in Mykonos, one of my favorite places. Please enjoy the rest of your day. I know you have a very busy day ahead of you, and I thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.